Michael Finnigan.
Hey, how you doing, guys?
Very well,
Great. How are
thank
you, Ed?
you. Well, from 4 a.m. this morning, I am wide awake on lemon juice, and it's going well. We're 5 hours in, but no, it's been a great day, and I know out of all the days, this is one of your busiest Mondays, so we are so grateful to have you on. And
Pleasure.
before I ask you to introduce yourself and what you do, I just want to let everybody know, if you have a question to ask to Michael, just put question and we'll get your questions in. So on that note, Michael, please share to the audience the brilliant work you do in the business and sports sector.
Okay, Ed. Yeah, I mean, we are predominantly, since 1992, when I started the research, we entered the field in probably 1998, six years in. And we got involved with a character called Jimmy White, a snooker player. And that led us down all sorts of avenues, because he went in his career from, I think, world number 50 to world number 5 in about 3 months. And that got us really famous. And from then, we started doing loads of sports work. It's only ever been 5% of what we've done, Ed. So 95% of the time, like at the moment, I'm working an awful lot with the NHS and with private hospitals who are being sequestered by the NHS. So I'm very, very busy in the commercial world normally. Private sector and public sector. So the biggest names in the world you would know are our clients. But the bit that we enjoy, and it's always been a 5% that we've had great success and great fun with, has been sports. So we've now worked on, I think, 4 continents in elite golf, elite rugby, elite football, cricket, winning the Cricket World Cup, Rugby League World Championship, Olympic gold and silver, bronze medals, Commonwealth Games, you name it, we seem to have done it. But it's very much applying the business principles that we apply to the sporting field and not treating them any differently. You're a client, you've got objectives, you've got obstacles, we'll help you get them out of your way. So that's what we've done, Ed, and privileged to be able to share some knowledge with any of your team and your colleagues today. So happy to do that.
Well, we are grateful. It's been far too long we haven't spoke, but the one thing I am going to mention, a long time ago, I've read this, I still read it, to remind myself when we have those days. So I would love you to share your philosophy of eye to eye. And if you don't mind, put it into like your brilliant videos you've been doing with this Kill Corona. Could you implant that as well? Because before Michael does his great thing, he's got one of the best smiles in the world. So one tip I'm going to say, smile more. And if you follow Michael, you will smile more in general. Because I don't know if you remember when we did our podcast in person, it was one of my favorite memories, of how we got connected. So, Michael, if you wouldn't mind explaining eye to eye, your big smile, and also this book as well.
Okay, so that one, I think, Ed, was the first one. I think it's written about 2003, and that was just about stories. I wrote out to a lot of clients. We've been going for 5 years then. And I wrote out to a lot of clients saying, look, just tell your story in your own words about what it was like when you understood these principles, that you're in control more of the time than you think you are, and all of the time in terms of what's going on around you. And they all wrote in. I got hundreds of people writing in, and I think I chose about 14 stories. And the concept of all the stories was they were in an impossible situation. So our company's called Eye to Eye, Ed, as you remember, and it means impossible to inevitable. That's all it means. Inspired by my mentor was a man called W. Clement Stone, who founded the Aon Corporation. Aon's now world headquarters in Leadenhall in London. It's got 65,000 employees. He started it on his own in 1923, selling insurance in Chicago on a bicycle at the age of 21. That was the story. He'd been doing it since he was 14. He'd been selling newspapers since he was 6. It's an unbelievable story. And his favorite song was The Impossible Dream. To dream the impossible dream, to fight the unbeatable foe. It was all that. That was his favorite song. If he ever wrote you a letter, on the back of the letter were the words to the song The Impossible Dream. Because that's how he wanted people to think. Think the impossible. Be audacious. Go about your big goals. Keep your eye on your really big goal, he always said. And he would say that today, especially in times like this, when it's too easy to drift to the small goals, which is just getting through this week or this month or this virus or whatever. So he believed in the impossible dream. When we were setting the company up, I wanted to get that into the title. And at the time, Christopher Reeve had fallen off his horse and had that horrendous spinal injury. And he was at a conference and he said, when you set out upon a quest or a goal, it should always feel impossible, because If it doesn't feel impossible, it isn't big enough. And then he said, if you do that, it soon assumes the mantle of possibility. And before you know it, success will become inevitable. And that's when I saw the opportunity to link the words impossible and inevitable, Mr. Stone, and then with Superman, just to get people to. So what we're doing, we're working with people who are in a situation where people around them are saying, what are you doing? That's impossible. You'll never do it. You'll never make that happen. Those are the clients we want, because we know that with the right mindset, impossibility becomes inevitability. And it's all about the state of mind. So that is what we've become experts in, Ed. That's what that book that you're holding told people in 2003. I've written a few since. It's a bit heavy, that, Ed, because it's got alcoholism and cancer and all sorts in it. So we wouldn't recommend it. It's only for the for the real academic amongst us, I suppose. It's not for the faint-hearted by any means. But we have written others since that are a bit lighter. But no matter where you go, we've taught in 27 countries, elite sporting championship victories in several, many, many, many disciplines. And wherever you go around the world, whether you teach in the Indian cricket team what it takes to win the World Cup, or a bunch of Aussies how to win the Rugby League World Championship, or an individual how to win a gold medal at the Olympic Games, it's no different. I know you've got people watching from all around the world. When I go around the world, I don't change my concepts. I don't change my material. I really do believe people are people. And I really do believe that impossibility exists in the minds of people everywhere, and that inevitability can be gained with a breakthrough in mindset. We don't change our material. You come and you do it. We all have thoughts. We all feel insecure. We all feel overwhelmed. So what? We've got techniques that can help you do it. And that is what we teach to people. We try to do it in a way that's inspirational and enjoyable and entertaining and fun, so they don't realize they're learning. But that works everywhere. And never, I don't think, of your people in your audience today been more called upon to spread that philosophy, Ed, than you're helping them do right now. It's more important than ever.
Look, I've got goosebumps. Your energy every time I watch your videos. As I said, there's one thing I just want to put it into one sporting example, if you don't mind, with Darren Clarke. I think out of all the stories, I've got inspired the most with the work you do, because as how we're living, it's a bit challenging for a lot of people, not just in sports industry, parents, kids. Would you mind just using the Darren Clarke example of how tough that was as an individual to then turn that into success, not just by winning a golf tournament, but success in how he managed to rebuild his family? I hope you don't mind, but you know me, I like to go that bit deeper.
No, not at all, Ed. That's fine. I mean, I picked Darren Clarke up as a client in 1998 because of Jimmy White. So Jimmy White was friends with Darren's manager, a guy called Chubby Chandler, who was the number 2 agent in golf at the time. And Chubby called me and said to me, does your stuff work in golf? And I said, well, I didn't know it worked in snooker till I worked with Jimmy White. So how the heck do I know? I'll give it a go if you will. So he got us working with Darren in 1998. And he was world number 35 at the time. He was 29 years old, I think. He was world number 35. Within just over 18 months, we had him. He was world number 7. He won the World Match Play Championship, beating a little guy called Tiger Woods, who was world number 1 at the time, in the final over 36 holes, 3 and 2. Walked away with a check for $1 million for one game of golf. And that was an easy start. And I thought we'd be on a roll then. What then happened is that Darren stepped back from us because he thought he'd done it. He'd done the mindset thing. And anybody who's read Zig Ziglar know that Zig Ziglar has a brilliant quote saying that motivation isn't permanent, but then neither is bathing. You have to do it every single day, at least a couple of times. So Darren thought he was fixed. He was world number 7. He paid me a massive fee and didn't want to do it again if he could avoid it. And he thought he knew it all and he didn't need the support. He found out very quickly, of course, that he did. And if you look at his results, they fall. What then happened was 10 years went by. We were still mates, but we never did any work together and saw each other once a year at events. But in the year 2011, he got to world number 150. So whatever he was doing apart from using me was obviously working. He was saving some money, which would be good. But he's back down to world number 150. In 2006, his wife Heather died of cancer, and Darren brought up the 2 boys, Tyrone and Connor, and has a very close relationship with them. And in 2011, when he got to world number 150, he called me back and said, "Look, I can't get any lower here. I'll have to pay you stupid fees again. Let's play. Let's go." And we started working together in April, Ed, 2011. And all I did in that time, all we did was did the stuff we did in 1998 again. Darren, do you remember this? Do you remember this? Do you remember this? Those basic habits that people can just fall into, that when they're positive, drive performance off the scale, but when they're negative, they hold you back. And he'd forgotten. I'd forgotten that. Well, don't forget it. You know, you're always looking for something new. There isn't anything new written under the sun. It's all old stuff. This wisdom comes from thousands of years ago. So we started doing what we were doing in 1998. He didn't play a tournament for 3 weeks because he was on holiday. His next tournament back was in the Mallorca Open in Spain. He hadn't won a golf tournament for 3.5 years. And he won the tournament in Spain by 5 shots.
Wow.
5 shots. His first win in 3.5 years. His next tournament was the Open Championship. He'd played in it 22 times and never won it. Guess what happened? He was 250 to 1 to win that championship, and he won it. And there was a point in the week where he sat down. We were at Royal St George's in Kent. The Open's supposed to be at Royal St George's this summer. It won't happen. And we were there, and he looked at me and said, "You know what? I just think this is it's my time. The game owns me. The game owes me one, and I think I'm going to take it back this week." And you know, he's just played with a sense of destiny. I've written this week that all of us, whether we realize it or not, are walking with destiny, as Winston Churchill said. We are walking with destiny. You know, what you do in this life, Russell Crowe said, as Gladiator, echoes in eternity. We are being tested now. What we do now will build our reputations forever. And he just got that sense, Ed, in 2011, that it was his time. And he won that championship. Dustin Johnson was there. Phil Mickelson, I think, finished second. But you know what? When you get that feeling that winning's inevitable, you take some stopping. And that's what happened then. Ed, I don't know if I've told you the story and mentioned the things you wanted me to mention, but that's the story.
Oh, no, it's top draw. Like, I wanted people to visualize it from an athlete's point of view, and I'm going to bring it back now. And I was going to say what skill set supported you, but I think we've talked about goals a lot today. And there's one thing that hasn't been talked enough, and it relates to Darren Clarke, you know, working with you again. How important is that first step with internal dialogue? And could you just go in a lot more into that? What does that mean, and how can people apply it today?
Yeah, it's fascinating. It's interesting because I've been on to making a couple of videos this morning for the NHS, and we've talked about that, about the importance of internal dialogue, because it can get you from despair to inspiration in a second. And people don't realize they can do that. They don't realize they're doing that to themselves. And it was massive with him. And the reason for it was he's quite a tense individual. You know, you need to really, to get the best out of what we do, you've really got to understand what makes an individual tick. And Darren is quite a tense individual. You know, he's fast moving. His brain processes information very quickly. But he gets uptight. Now, in 4 rounds of golf, there's lots of opportunities to get uptight, slow play. I don't know, you know, the audience, members of the audience, the crowd shouting out, getting a bounce off a sprinkler head. There's loads of reasons to get into despair. But what he didn't realize was it's only 1 second to get out. And so your internal dialogue then becomes everything. Probably you know, if I talked about the 5 or 6 lessons that he learned, that's the lesson. But the key is to get him to realize it, then to get him to do something about it, and then to drill him to make sure that when he needs it, it's there. Because you can't be inside the ropes with your golfer when he's on the 18th fairway of the Open Championship. You're not there. And we have to teach them interdependence. If they don't get that and they cue it up that it's you bringing it to them all the time, they've got absolutely nowhere. They've got to learn it for themselves. So we don't want to be there on the fit. We can't be on the pitch in a Premier League game. We can't be on the pitch in a Cricket World Cup final. You have to take us with you. You have to take us out onto the field with you, and we'll be your voice. But it's you that has to make that happen. We can't do it for them. They've got to take responsibility. And that was the biggest lesson he probably learned. Absolutely.
So relating to the live audience, because we're all at home permanently, with regards to internal dialogue, what sort of tips would you give to people who, you know, we've gone through 2 weeks? What tips would you give somebody in a month's time, 3 months, 6 months? Like, how would you break that down, if that makes sense?
Well, I think what's going to happen it's going to get easier, isn't it? So in 6 months' time, I think the challenge we're going to have in 6 months' time is how has the world changed? and where do I fit? So I'm teaching people now to get ready for that by saying, we don't know where the world's going to be, but what internal dialogue can you have then that will set you up for that happening? And the internal dialogue you can have is that I'm a genius, right? I'm a genius. I'm ace. Whatever the world's like, it's going to need me. Now, that's probably all you can do for 6 months. In 3 months, you're going to be starting to the point where this thing is going to come to the end. I just wrote last night that Winston Churchill said, this isn't the beginning of the end. It is perhaps the end of the beginning. In 3 months' time, we're going to be nearer to the end. So then we can start to prepare ourselves, and we will start to get a sense of what the world's going to be like. So then it's about, what I don't want people to be doing then is to realize they've been in a slumber for 3 months, and now all of a sudden you're going to have to wake yourself up. Hey, you're not a machine, right? It's not flicking a switch. That doesn't happen. So you're going to have to be ready for 3 months' time and ready for 6 months' time. And what that means, if you think about it, is that right now, in the teeth of this gale, you're going to have to be, I heard Gary Neville the other day talk about being at the eye of the storm where it's quite calm in the middle. You're going to have that sense of calmness where you're getting yourself ready now, because you know that whatever it turns out it's going to be all right for you. Now to be having that positive inner dialogue when you're around us, people are getting ill, people are dying, people have got so much confusion and uncertainty. That's difficult. We understand that. But you know what? That's leadership. And that's the mark of the outstanding individual. It's easy to be positive, Ed, when everything's positive.
Yeah.
Eric Simons, who was, when I was involved with the South African cricket team for 2 years, the coach there was Eric Simons. And on my first day at Lords, in the first test match that I went to with him, where I was working, he said to me, "Welcome to Test cricket." And I was kind of smiling, and it's the home of cricket, and everybody was happy. He said, the reason we call it Test cricket is because what's being tested is not your skill, it is your character. And that's what being tested now, Ed, not skill. Character. How do you stand up? When we look back on it, will you be a person who we look back on and say, do you know what? When it was tough, he was special. He was exceptional. He helped me. That's what people will remember. So you've got to do that, not when times are great. You've got to do it now when times are difficult, Ed. That's the time to do it. So your internal dialogue has got to be first and forefront, right at the forefront of your mind, first and foremost, right at the front of your mind, every single minute of every single day. We're being tested.
Well, there's just a quote that comes to my mind from my old headmaster, Greg Davis. He said, challenge creates character. So, and you're absolutely spot on what you've just said. And look, with regards to sport development and peace, which we're celebrating today in our global calendar, when I say to you spirit of sport in this current situation, what does that mean to you?
Well, again, if I take you back to the South African story again, when you work at that elite level in cricket, and I've been privileged to do it with a few teams, in South Africa, they had Nelson Mandela. So at that time, 2003 and 2004, and if I look at that team, it was full of really hard men. If I don't know how well your audience will know some of the names, but Sean Pollock, Mark Boucher, who's the head coach now, people like Graham Smith, just a hard guy, and the hardest of them all, Jack Callis, the only cricketer the Australians never sledged was Jack. But one night we were going to be having dinner with Mandela, and they were looking forward to it so much. And at the last minute, this dinner was cancelled. He had to do some affair of state came up, and he couldn't make it. And we were in the room waiting for him. And the number of people I could see tears in the eyes of these, granite hard men, tears in their eyes. And afterwards, talking to them about him, and they said to me, Jack Callis said to me, "You've never met him, have you? You've no idea what effect this guy has on us all. He is the father of our nation." So my memory of peace and seeing how statesmanship and how lessons from life can transfer into sport is absolutely immense. Sometimes we get lulled into in sport. Oh, sport's different. Premier League football's different. Do you know what? No, it isn't. It's human beings with weakness and fears and insecurity. And a character like Nelson Mandela, or a character like maybe one of your audience, and can walk into a room and just bring some calmness in with them, is going to have a huge impact on these people, because it's not about talent. It never is. If it was about talent, you wouldn't be there. So in terms of what people I've been privileged to work with people like the Dalai Lama and Desmond Tutu and they just bring that aura of calmness into the room with them, and it makes a difference, and it makes a difference instantly. So I've loved the title of your conference today, Peace and Sport, because they go together so well, and it's brilliant what you're doing for people, Ed.
Absolutely. And we've just got a question come through. It's just on the screen. It's, what's the best approach to assist athletes with low self-efficiency and performance anxiety? And I'm probably going to say during this time where they can't actually train, to their performance.
Yeah, I think there's a couple of things that spring to mind with the question. I think the first thing is, and I think we're all good at it, is we're all kind of natural communicators. So, if you're feeling up here and they're coming to you because you're up there and they're down here, we all know that that conversation doesn't work. So you've almost got to come down to their level. One of my friends, Gary Kirsten, used to talk very much about Duncan Fletcher, who we work with in the England cricket setup. And Fletcher was always telling you about how great he was and how, when he scored a century. And Kirsten said to him one day, can you just tell me about when you couldn't buy a run? When it wasn't working for you, when things weren't working out, and just come down to my level where I am, is what he was saying. Come and meet me where I am, and then slowly take me with you. I think that's the biggest tip you can give to people, is not going on about success all the time. But we call it vulnerability, don't we? We call it disclosure in our world. And a little bit of disclosure to say, do you know what? I've said it this morning on video, I give myself a good talking to every single day. Because people think you're a Superman, and you're not, right? You're human beings. But what you know is that you're only not being Superman today because you choose not to be. So give yourself that good talking to, but meet people where they are and slowly bring them with you. And I think that really helps a lot of people who are struggling with low self-esteem, especially if they can't prepare at the moment. What they also have to do is to learn to prepare in their mind. I've said it to one of my young golfers this week, if you play the Masters this week, how many shots are you going to drop? And he texted me back about 5 hours later, said, Mike, I went round in 4 under at Augusta. He's only 20. Well, that's pretty good.
It is indeed. Very good. And just on that note, with you giving yourself a sort of talking to, like self-talk, I assume, if that's correct, do you have a routine that you have in the morning that sets you up for the day?
I used to, Ed, in the early days, I think. I used to have a routine because you're trying to get that conscious competence, aren't you?
Yeah.
Early on, So you're very much trying to drill yourself to do it, and I still recommend that. I've been recommending it, this morning. But now I would like to think that after 28 years, the message has kind of got home a little bit. So I'm not so much into a routine. What I'm more aware of is if I find myself not doing it, if I find myself not waking up great, then I think what I have to do is to work on saying, hey, come on, Finnigan, the world needs you. The world's relying on you. Your thoughts may be justifiable, but they're not good enough to sort yourself out. So I'm better at it, giving myself a stern talking to rather than the routine. One of the things I ask at interview of people is, tell me 10 things about you that make you amazing. And you'd be amazed at the number of people who can't do it. They can't do it. Well, you've got to be able to rattle them off. And I guess after 28 years, those kind of things should start to becoming hardwired. But catch yourself out if you're not doing that. Catch yourself out when it's not happening. So you've got to use a few more. Know what? It's not a silver bullet, this stuff, is it? You need a lot of ammunition to throw at these things, and that's one of the ones that I use. So what I've got better at is catching myself out. Not letting it become a bad day, not letting it become a bad morning, but catching it if you can in the first 5 minutes and saying, "Hey, come on, Finnigan, what are you playing at? This is not good enough."
So it's creating that bit of accountability in your own self-awareness.
Yeah, definitely accountability. Well, I think accountability and realization that it's only me.
Yeah.
That actually, I'm sorry, it isn't the virus. It isn't the job insecurity. It isn't. It's me.
Yeah.
Nothing else. Nothing else. And the more you do this stuff, the more you realize these people who are where you want to be in life, these people who are successful, who've got where you want to get to, that is what they believe. They don't make any excuses. There are no circumstances they believe that, okay, I might not be able to control it, but I can always control my response to it. And so that, I think, becomes absolutely phenomenal then. So more than accountability, but recognition that you're doing it and recognition that you control it. And then the accountability, right, well, okay, then take control, make it happen, do it.
Exactly. Look, I hope you're enjoying this, everybody, because this has been a different slant for some of the other conversations we had about mindset. Yeah, it has, and I knew when you're coming on, I'll find a way to, especially with your videos, like everybody on Twitter, like we'll do a retweet today on our page of your brilliant, like, I know you're not big onto the tech side, but it's great to see you using it, because honestly, you on camera, you just spark my morning. And let me know in the comments if you are feeling the energy from Michael, from a different perspective of the sports industry, a different perspective of how you be more controlled of your own day. So instead of waking up thinking, I don't know if you agree, but this is something I've learned from when we last spoke, is I'm a big believer the first sort of 10 minutes of the day can define your day. It's just something I've learned from all these books behind me and this one as well. So just wrapping up this great conversation, Michael, out of interest, what change would you like to see in sport or even human behavior when things sort of, should we say, bracket, go back to normal, if that makes sense?
Yeah, I'd like to think there'll be a bit more humility, Ed, amongst it. I mean, if people ever ask me, of all the people I've worked with, who are the most enjoyable, and it's either footballers at the end of their careers when they get to 30, 31 years old, and all of a sudden they realise they're not Superman, they are mortal, and they are going to have to start working on life. Or it's athletes who ain't maybe earning very much money, you know, like the cricketers, like the rugby league players, like the athletes striving for the Olympic Games, where it really is about the joy of competing and of finding what makes them amazing. So those are the people I enjoy with us, and I'd like to see a little bit more of that. You know, I mean, I think footballers in the Premier League, they do a lot behind the scenes, but they don't manage their profiles really well. Jack Grealish hasn't covered himself in glory this weekend. Neither has this guy Walker at Manchester City. So I'd like to see them more holistically realising that it's not all about what you do on the field. For me, 22 years into sporting career, it's 10% about what you can do on the field. I'll take people with amazing self-esteem and amazing character every time over a more talented individual. You know, working with people like Sam Allardyce at Bolton Wanderers for 5 years and David Moyes for 9 at Everton, we didn't have the most talented people, but I tell you what, we give you a game. You didn't want to come and play us because we were not going to lie down. And that was all about character. That was all about what you can build. So I'd like to see more of that in sport, a recognition that it's not about just what you do on the field, that it's off the field as well. And that's more important for me.
Look, that's like music to my ears, because it goes back to what you said. It's about the mindset. Like when you talk about Bolton Wanderers, it's being a threat to the opposition before they even kick a ball. Look, Michael, this has been a wonderful chat. How can people interact with you on social media?
Well, I'm doing a lot on LinkedIn, Ed, at the moment. So I'm more on LinkedIn than Twitter. I think there's a lot of, I'm coming across a lot of negativity on there, whereas there seems to be a lot less negativity on LinkedIn. So I'm on LinkedIn. That's where you'll catch me. I'm on every day. And seriously, I look forward to seeing anybody on there who's been a part of your conference, because they're like minds, right?
Absolutely. Well, everybody, there'll be a link to connect with Michael through LinkedIn on the comment section. Michael, you have a fantastic rest of the day, and thank you for taking the time.
You too. It's been an absolute privilege. Thanks, everyone. Have a great day.